Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today we're tracing a really fascinating 500-year philosophical tug-of-war. We're going to look at how a major ancient institution, the Catholic Church, defines the very nature of reality, human transformation, and, well, grace. It's essentially a deep dive into the metaphysics of mystery, and I'm absolutely thrilled to unpack this with you.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap for the explainer. We'll start with the purpose of sacraments, then look at how they actually work. After that, we hit the Vatican II shift, the anthropological turn, and finally, reclaiming sacramental realism.
So our guide for this journey is the text, The Seven Sacraments of the Catholic Church by Romanus Cessario. Through this book, you'll see firsthand how high-level theology operates. It's not just dusty textbook stuff. It's a dynamic, highly active debate about the actual fabric of the universe.
To get us started, we definitely need a baseline. Going all the way back to the 16th century Council of Trent, the classical definition of a sacrament has been divinely instituted visible signs that confer, strengthen, or restore holiness to human beings. Notice those active verbs. This isn't just about passive symbolism, right? It's about an active, objective transformation of the human person.
Which brings us to Section 1, the purpose of sacraments.
If we fast forward a bit to the 20th century, the Second Vatican Council framed these rites beautifully as a visible sign of a saving unity. So the crucial historical point remains. As the Catechism states, the sacraments confer the grace they signify. This concise statement tells us that traditionally, these aren't just empty rituals or, nice community get-togethers. They are understood to objectively do something for the recipient. They literally bring about the spiritual reality they visually represent. Water doesn't just symbolize cleansing here. In this framework, it actually enacts a spiritual cleansing.
All right, moving on to Section 2. How do sacraments work?
Let's roll up our sleeves a bit. Do sacraments cause grace, or do they just symbolize it? This right here is the core intellectual conflict we're exploring today. Are they objective causes of a spiritual reality, or just subjective symbols meant to inspire us psychologically? Well, the historical answer from classical theology leans heavily, unabashedly into causality.
To understand that classical answer, we really have to travel back to ancient philosophy. Aristotle, always a light read, right, defined 4 types of causes to explain how anything in the universe comes to be. Briefly, the material cause is what a thing is made of. The formal cause is its design. The final cause is its purpose. And the efficient cause is the agent that actually makes it happen. Catholic theology borrowed this brilliant classical framework to explain divine action.
Now, the one we really care about today is efficient causality. Think of this as the primary source of change, a positive principle from whence something flows with a dependence in being. Traditional thinkers, especially Thomas Aquinas, use this exact concept to describe a real physical influx of power from an agent to a patient. So, in other words, in a sacrament, God is the efficient cause doing the heavy lifting to create a spiritual change. And this brilliantly illustrates a subconcept called instrumental causality. Just think of a sculptor. Just as the sculptor uses a chisel to carve a statue, God uses the sacraments as separated instruments to shape the soul. The chisel doesn't make the beautiful statue on its own, does it? It needs the sculptor's hands and vision. In the exact same way, the physical water, oil, or bread isn't acting alone. It's the physical instrument of a divine artist. It takes some pretty heavy metaphysics and makes it incredibly easy to grasp.
That sets us up for Section 3, the Vatican II shift.
This 500-year philosophical evolution tracks a truly monumental shift. We move from the Council of Trent in the 16th century, which solidified those classical definitions, to an 1870s revival of Thomas Aquinas. But then, the 1960s brought the massive paradigm shift of the Second Vatican Council, which was aiming for a return to the sources of early Christianity, leading right up to the 1992 Catechism. This 20th century era is exactly when modern ideas began challenging that classical framework of causes and instruments.
In the wake of Vatican II, many popularizers pushed what's called a hermeneutic of discontinuity, basically claiming the Church had totally abandoned old-school ontology for modern, relatable ideas like simply encountering God or celebrating community. But as Pope Benedict XVI pointed out, the hermeneutic of discontinuity is countered by the hermeneutic of reform. The intention wasn't a rupture from the past at all. The tradition was meant to be deepened, not just discarded.
Let's move into Section 4, the anthropological turn.
During the 70s and 80s, social sciences like sociology and psychology began replacing classical philosophy to try and make faith more accessible to everyday people. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark contrast it creates. On one side, the traditional view, sacraments are efficacious signs of grace that truly cause a spiritual reality. On the other side, the heavily criticized 1980s catechetical view, they are just ritual acts celebrating what is already happening to a community. You can see how this anthropological turn kind of completely deflated the supernatural punch of the classical view. It made the focus entirely about us, our community, and our feelings, rather than about an objective, divine action.
This shift actually created a genuine crisis of meaning. Pope John Paul II warned about the danger of scientism, noting that it refuses to admit the validity of forms of knowledge other than those of the positive sciences. His point is profound here. If you only use sociology or cultural anthropology to explain a sacrament, you functionally leave God completely out of the equation. The rites get reduced to mere group therapy or sociological milestones.
Which leads to our final part, Section 5, Reclaiming Sacramental Realism.
To solve this exact crisis of meaning and bring the divine back into focus, modern theologians like Cardinal Danels realized a pretty hard truth. Without an ontological grounding, meaning a real foundation in the philosophy of being, mere communitarian symbolic activity is completely inadequate. A symbol alone, without a cause behind it, simply isn't enough to carry the massive weight of divine salvation.
Let's move to and see how this builds perfectly on ancient wisdom. The 3rd century writer Tertullian famously stated, "The flesh is the hinge of salvation." This means that tangible, physical, material reality is absolutely crucial to the logic of the incarnation. God doesn't just work in abstract ideas. He uses physical stuff, flesh, water, oil, bread, to do real, lasting spiritual work.
So what's the ultimate takeaway here? It's sacramental realism. This is about re-embracing a philosophy of being that views reality in its ontological, causal, and communicative structures. By reclaiming this classical realism, the sacraments are understood once again as efficient instruments of divine agency. They aren't just subjective human experiences. They are literally the chisels in the hands of the divine sculptor, actively transforming reality.
Which leaves us with a really fascinating, real-world tension to ponder. Can ancient metaphysics survive in a world ruled by social science? As you've seen, the frameworks we choose to describe reality profoundly shape what we believe is actually happening in the room. If we lose the language of causality, do we lose the mystery itself? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. I hope it's left you looking at the invisible machinery of our world in a completely new way.